Because it was during the Industrial Revolution, he was worried about the rights of the worker. And guess what grew out of that? Unions. So the people would get a just wage. But you see, way back then, and early in the Industrial Revolution, where there were all kinds of people to work and not a lot of jobs, they could hire people for less than they really should have. And so they took advantage of the worker. And they suggested things which then were unbelievable, but today we take for granted things like organizations and collective bargaining. And here we are, more than 100 years later, the beneficiaries of that vision of human dignity, because that was the problem then. But then you know what they talked about next? The right to own property. The right to own property. And that's not such an old issue, because in a kind of reverse way, we're dealing with that right now, aren't we? With people losing their homes, even here in Michigan. So what do we do to help people stay in their homes? What can be done? And then they begin to see that there are all kinds of rights, and that brings us to a beautiful social encyclical called Pacem in Terris, Peace on Earth, where in this section, by the way, I use this book so much it's falling apart. Some of the pages I put in wrong, so they're even upside down. So if I turn the book, it's, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. In the document Pacem in Terris, there are 32 rights that we have as human beings, and 32 corresponding duties if we have a right. And one of them that wasn't talked about much until the time of the Second Vatican Council is the right of every human being to practice his or her faith. Okay? Pretty important right, wouldn't you say? Well, one of our seminarians, in fact, who's going to be ordained this year, just received religious asylum in the United States. Joseph, he's from China. He wanted to be a priest, but he was from the underground church. And he had boycotted and helped organize a boycott against two bishops who were being ordained by the Patriotic Association, who did not have the permission of the Holy See to be ordained bishops. And so they kicked him out of the seminary. Luckily, he was able to bribe somebody, and he got out of the country. And 2 days after he got out of China, the secret police showed up at his parents' home to arrest him because he was from the underground church. But he left the country, cannot go back. A very intelligent young man learned English without an accent in about 9 months. Now he's studying Spanish because he discovered that there's many Americans that speak that as well. And he'll be ordained a deacon for our diocese on the 6th of June. But here we have the right that we take for granted to be able to practice our faith in a country which we do business with all the time, that is denying that right to brothers and sisters we know who are Catholic, who can't practice it. The other thing is, in a few weeks now, Pope Benedict XIII will issue his own social encyclical dealing with many of the issues that we're dealing with today, because he feels that he has to respond as he looks at the greed in corporations and some of the other issues and problems which exist out there. But let me share with you what they have to say about rights in Pacem in Terris. We have the right to live, the right to bodily integrity, the right to the means necessary for proper development of life, particularly food, clothing, shelter, medical care, rest, and finally, the necessary social services. In consequence, we have the right to be looked after in the event of ill health, disability stemming from work, widowhood, old age, enforced unemployment, or whenever through no fault of our own we're deprived of the means of our livelihood. Pretty important rights. You think they're all honored? You know one of the problems we have in the medical profession today? I ran into this in South Dakota. Doctors who feel that they're wasting their time if they take care of the elderly. We had parish nurses who had to go in and advocate for some people because of some young doctors that we had to deal with in that community in South Dakota. who felt they were wasting their time taking care of the elderly. And since I'm moving into that category with both feet, and looking around the room, some of you have beat me there, we should be a little concerned about it. But if you want to know what are the 32 rights which we possess, you can find them in this document. Or to put it differently, the Church's teaching on social justice, which is the underpinning of what the Church has to say when we talk about abortion or euthanasia or capital punishment or all of the other life issues, war and peace. And those of you may be aware, I just wrote a document on peace which is available through the parish, and if they don't have it, they can get more. All of those things are things that we as Catholics have to be concerned about. And it's impossible to say, well, I'm for this, but not for that. Because either we're pro-human being or we're not. And either we're concerned about our brother and sister and we see ourselves as people of faith as their keeper, or we're not. Either we see everyone else as our equal, or we don't. And how we see one another will tell a lot about how we treat each other. Now, there are some of us who suffer from what I call anger euthanasia. Those are people who are mad at somebody but they can't remember anymore why. And I would guess that there's probably some out there. Guess what? If we're to be people of justice, we have to be forgiving of everyone. Let me tell you a story. This may shock you. Do you know that there's one or two priests that don't like me? It's true. Well, there was this one priest, and he actually had kind of a right not to like me, so I decided I would call him and apologize. So I called him up, and this was in a different diocese because here, all the priests love me. I called. Thank you. Thank you, Monsignor. I called him up and I said, Father, I'd like to have lunch with you. He said, I'm busy. I went through my schedule. Every lunch I had opened, he was the busiest priest I ever met, so I started on breakfast. He said, you're serious about this, aren't you? I said, I am. So he finally agreed to meet me, and I met him at one of those pancake places. You know, the ones that have those pancakes? They're real thick, and they hide the butter in between the two covers, and the hot syrup as well. Now, he was a type A person. And so when he cut through those 3 pancakes, it was a perfect pie shape. And he had put his fork right into those 3 pancakes, and he was about to put it in his mouth, and I said, Father, I wanted to bring you out to breakfast because I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. He was so shocked that the syrup dripped all the way back to the plate. But here's my question for you. The way you treat others, is there anyone in your experience that would be shocked if you told them you were sorry? And if there is, you've got a couple more things to do before Lent is over. But in doing it, you will be practicing the wonderful tradition of the Church where we understand that each one of us is created in God's image and because deserves the most profound respect. And if we as Catholics could live that, we would discover the real strength in numbers to help our nation also become a nation where life and respect for the dignity of the other is most important indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you. I know I'm over time, but I'll take 1 or 2 questions if anybody would like to ask a question. Because I hate you to go home just hating me. Anything you always want to ask the bishop? Anyone want to ask a question? Yes, ma'am. The question was, when did I decide I wanted to become a priest? Well, if you went back and looked at my high school yearbook, you discover I wanted to be a doctor. And it was about halfway through pre-med that I was accepted at 3 colleges. I chose the one with a seminary across the street. It's just my life.